10 regions, hundreds of debates, victories and losses, and they have all led us to this very moment. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 2016 Nationals of the Great Debaters Contest. I am your host, Mariam Bishar. It's an all-guys affair today, as we have Sigalame High School go versus St. Mary's Yala, and they are debating on whether the government should declare environmental degradation a national disaster. We'll have the debaters take the stage now and prove to us why they are the nationals. Proposer number 1, you have 3 minutes.
Environmental degradation. Environmental degradation is like a stamp letter on a solitary mind, an optimistic mind, the government, which brings and strengthens the weakened mind of the recipient, the local mwananchi. First, we have to strengthen the letter and bolden the letters in this letter to make sure that we show the local mwananchi the evident advantages of environmental degradation. The government is the centralized, organized body charged with managing, guiding the social, economic, political affairs of a particular people within a particular jurisdiction. Environmental degradation is the process by which the Earth's natural resources are depleted from its face by social, economic, and political issues, which result into pollution of air, soil, and water. National disasters are malfunctions in the functioning of a community that exceeds the ability of the existing community to combat such situations, which leads to outrageous spread of economic, social, and environmental losses. Moving on to my first point, over 80% of Kenya's land is considered semi-arid or arid, which means recurrent drought activities in this area cause food insecurity. 1 million people in Kenya, over 1 million people in Kenya, live in recurrent occasions of flood, disasters, fires, terrorism, mention them all. Taking a case study, in Nairobi and Central Province being an exception, all the other provinces and counties in this country contribute more than 80% to environmental degradation in this country. Now, a recent research by GEF, Global Environmental Foundation, in this country has shown that the temperatures are projected to be changing by 1.3 degrees Celsius in 2020 and 3.1 degrees Celsius by 2050, an alarming rate of 7.1 degrees Celsius in 2080, a limited time of 64 hours. In November 2013, residents of Otieno Uhuru near Mombasa demonstrated against the lead plant that had been stationed in the region. Why? Because it has caused massive destruction. It has claimed the life of 5 in a time limit of 1 month, affecting other 3,000. With this, the medical practitioners in the country emphasized that by 2009, the blood test of these people had shown sickly children, had shown reduced fertility rates, had shown a lot of miscarriages. People, fellow audience, environmental degradation is something that we must combat. We must start with our environment. Terrorism is much bigger, we accept, but then we must start with our environment. Aborting argument, Philip Onyango, St. Mary's School, Yala.
Thank you. Sigalame High School, you have 3 minutes for your opening statements.
Why make a permanent decision in a temporary situation? Why build mountains out of anthills? Can't we curb environmental degradation? Certainly we can. I'm a clean robot, ready to oppose this motion and to validate the assertion that indeed environmental degradation should not be declared a national disaster. Now, wait a minute. If I faint here right now, will you declare me dead? Certainly not. You'll find ways to resuscitate me. Now, why do you want to declare environmental degradation a disaster, yet we Kenyans are ready to combat it? Now, look at deforestation. Deforestation is actually causing environmental degradation by reducing the aesthetic value of our environment. But is it necessary for us to declare it a national disaster? Look at this. We Kenyans are ready to carry out reforestation, afforestation, carry out mass sensitization, and our MPs are ready to enact laws that will actually prevent illegal logging, and therefore we will be able to conserve our forest. Why then rush in declaring environmental degradation a national disaster? Now, if we Kenyans had taken one Professor Wangari Maathai seriously, who founded the Green Belt movement in 1977 and throughout her lifetime has managed to plant 20 million trees, where would we be? We won't be complaining that our heritage right now is facing a threat. Look at Mau Forest, Karura Forest, and Kakamega Forest. They are facing a great threat of encroachment. We won't be complaining about that. Our government leaders should actually stop lip service and take the mantle of environmental conservation by planting trees, not just sitting in offices and ready to assent to bills of declaring environmental degradation a national disaster. On top of that, look at this. Emission of greenhouse gases like methane and chlorofluorocarbons actually lead to the depletion of the ozone layer, which has resulted in causing global warming, and on top of that, penetration of harmful ultraviolet rays. Now, this global warming is actually leading to climate variability and changes, and these harmful ultraviolet rays have led to, the skin cancer diseases. But God gave us three noble faculties: will, intellect, and conscience. We are able to choose what's right for us. Must we eat products from the greenhouse gases? Who said so? And on top of that, my grandmother always feeds us, but she doesn't depend on greenhouse food products. Now, let me tell you about the simple greenhouse that my grandmother uses. I hope you want to know it. My grandmother simply plants her crops in a sack. Now, this sack is able to provide the greenhouse temperatures but does not emit the greenhouse gases. Now, isn't she being more creative than most of us here? If we could buy the idea of my grandmother, we won't be complaining of the greenhouse gases that are detrimental to our ozone layer. Instead, we would be conserving our environment. Now, let me ask you a question. If we have rats in the house, do you declare it a house disaster? No. We come up with means to curb the rat. You can buy a gun and shoot the rat, or rather, you can use a bait trap. Therefore, I don't believe in protecting the environment. I simply believe in one thing. I believe in creating an environment that does not need protection. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll hear cross-examinations, beginning with a proposition. You have 3 minutes.
About your fainting, Robert, we will declare you dead until we realize otherwise that you are breathing. Now, my English teacher told me that a good argument is like a miniskirt. It should be long enough to cover the subject matter, but then short enough to excite interest. Dear countrymen, is there interest in calling environmental degradation a petty thing? For Christ's sake. Now, I'm so saddened that Robert can come and convince such a learned audience that a sack, a granny sack, for goodness sake, comparing it with a vast land in a nation. Kenya is quite vast. You cannot apply the same mechanisms that you use in a sack to curb environmental degradation in a vast land such as Kenya. Now, at the age of 70, Ngai Mutoboro may not have been having the vibrancy that he might have been having in his youthful stage, but still can afford to punch a few punches when it comes to environmental degradation. Now, this elder from Tharaka Nithi County has been harassed and arrested severally. In fact, earlier this year, he lost a member of his group as they were trying to agitate against the illegal exploitation of Mount Kenya forest by powerful politicians. Come on. These are people whom we've elected and vested responsibility unto them to govern this country to the greatest height and to implement whatever the citizenry of this nation wants to be done. But they've turned their backs on us. What can we do? We have to declare environmental degradation a national disaster so that we can get access to foreign assistance, which is more powerful compared to our leaders. Now, just to fortify on a point that was stated by my predecessor, the satellite images from 2008 January in 1996, and 28 January 1996 and 30 January 2010 indicate that a percentage of 32.71 of forest in the Mau region has been depleted. The aftermath of this was the 1999 and 2001 drought. Now, it affected 4.5 million people and decimated 60 to 70% of livestock in ASAL regions in the region. Now, the government spent a colossal amount of $340 million US. What an amount. Yet, 70% of Kenyan forest is still being put into use as energy. We need an upright mechanism to do this. And that is the way to go by declaring environmental degradation a national disaster. I'm Wesley Omondi. I affirm the motion.
Sigalame will hear your cross-examination. You have 3 minutes.
I suffer from a sense of utter emptiness. Why? Because it baffles me that man has turned out to be the enemy of man himself. But I shall still utter. Now, we've talked of drought, and there are other methods of surmounting this drought to avoid its adverse effects on our land. Can't we use rehabilitation, reclamation, just as Netherlands has done it using the Zuidazi method? Why are we only crying that it should be a national disaster when we know that we already have the solutions in our hands? Somebody said Otieno Uhuru Estate. Sorry, it's Owino Uhuru, not Otieno Uhuru. Now, we all know that that problem is already surmounted. Did we need a declaration that it's a national disaster for us to surmount it? No. It was all because we consolidated our minds together as the leaders there to come up with solutions for the same. Kenya does not only need to depend on foreign assistance. We can do it ourselves. And that is where we're headed to. Because we say we want foreign assistance. That will be compromising our sovereignty. Kenya is a public state. Why do we risk asking for foreign assistance when we know very well that it is expensive on our sides? Please, let us allow our own country, Kenya, to think and solve our problems as they come. Recycling of materials can be one of the reasons that can reduce environmental degradation in our country. Take, for example, an epitome is Rwanda. Rwanda as a country is ranked among the most cleanest countries just because the proper methods of disposal. We can only copy, not allowing them to come in our country to show us if Rwanda has done it. We are a democratic country. Rwanda is a democratic country. Then why can't we also do it? If the problem is land that is unproductive, we have acres of land that we cannot even plant tomatoes or onions. Turkana, to be real, is a dry land. Egypt is a dry land. Egypt has River Nile. Turkana has Lake Turkana. But don't Egypt use their River Nile to support agriculture in their country? Why can't we also use our Lake Turkana to support agriculture in Turkana? That is just but one of the surmounting reasons that can be used to curb environmental degradation instead of crying it's a national disaster. Yet you know we have the reasons. We can curb it. Now we as Kenyans, when we say we want to declare environmental degradation as a disaster, it means we've given up. Throw away the child, the basin, and the water. Throw away the solution together with the disaster. Thank you very much. Enjoy the omelette.
So thank you to the audience for those questions. The proposers have been asked, how will declaring environmental degradation a national disaster help in either curbing pollution or more degradation? And the opposition have been asked, if not environmental degradation, then what should we declare as a disaster? Or what qualifies to be declared as a national disaster? We'll have them respond to those questions. Proposal number 3, you have 3 minutes.
The government should declare environmental degradation a national disaster. I strongly agree. I'm Shadak Umondi. I'm here to answer the question posed by a member of the audience asking how will declaration of environmental degradation as a national disaster help in controlling it? This will help in many ways. First, declaration of national disaster the government will allocate funds for this cause. Then it will create awareness the citizens. The government will put down strategies which will ensure that the public is aware of the effects of the rash use of the resources in the environment and how the resources can be used effectively. It will also build up the scope. If we declare it as a national disaster, we will open up gates to funds from outside. We'll open up gates to donor aid. We'll open up gates to the people themselves. The people will be aware of the importance of the environment and they'll try their level best to conserve it. Then it will also help in many other ways. And as a popular person said, the first step to solving a problem is to admit it exists. This is what we do when we create environmental awareness. If we create environmental awareness, we are admitting that environmental degradation is a national problem and should be handled before it gets to drastic levels. That's why we must declare it a national disaster. And it seems our opponents don't seem to understand the meaning of declaration of national disaster. It does not merely mean assenting to the resignation to the problem or just saying that the problem is beyond our strength. It's recognizing the problem as a threat to our growth and establishing ways to eliminate it. That's the true definition of environmental degradation. And as for a member who said that we can use Lake Turkana for irrigation, I don't know, but I have never heard of salty water being used for irrigation. I think that will be a first. And I think Wangari Maathai will square me if he were present in this room. If he should have had a member of the opposition side calling environmental degradation a temporary problem. He will squirm something he worked his life for. He worked his entire life for. She worked her entire life for, being called a temporary problem that we should not go on bickering around with. Thank you. Shada Komandi on the podium, St. Mary's School, Yala.
Opposition, you have 3 minutes to respond to the questions.
We live in a man-eat-man society. What will be of a country without industries? Look, you've raped my mother. My mother is Mother Nature. The product of this rape is pregnancy, and the pregnancy is environmental degradation. I am caught in a catch-22 situation between a rock and a hard place. If my mother is to give birth, then she'll lose her life. But if I want to save my mother's life, then she has to terminate the pregnancy. So what will I do? I will go for the lesser equal. Terminate environmental degradation and save Mother Nature's life. I am Carlos Oyoma from Sigalame High School, ready to give you reasons why environmental degradation should not be declared a national disaster. So, who said that when the Mara River is drying up, we declare a national disaster? Let me tell you something. The ultimate measure of man is where he stands in times of difficulties and not where he stands in times of comfort. I was asked a question that what should we then declare a national disaster if environmental degradation is not a national disaster? There is nothing that is beyond our reach. We have the solution for everything. And I do believe that there is nothing in this country that is worth enough for us to declare it a national disaster or a national catastrophe. We have the ability to curb every menace facing this country. I believe in the 3 R's. Reduce, reuse, and recycle. These function by cutting on the solid waste that human beings dispose, and together with the appropriate legislation by the legislative arms of government, be sure we shall not be having dumping sites around us. And believe when there are no dumping sites around us, then
we've curbed environmental degradation. Do we need to declare that a national disaster? Many farmers in our country purchase pesticides to kill pests in their farm. And they do not only kill pests, but slowly by slowly, they kill human beings through soil pollution and water contamination. So, why should they waste a lot of money purchasing these pesticides while we have free and harmless pesticides flying around in our farms in the name of ladybirds? Let us use this biological means to curb this. And then, we do not need to declare it a national disaster. When HIV and AIDS was declared a national disaster, have we curbed the menace? It is still there. Yet it was declared a national disaster. Now, you are victims, you are stuck inside a hole. What do? Sit down and cry for help that is not forthcoming? Or continue digging deep inside the hole? Or devise means of coming out of the hole? Look, I've been bitten by a snake. Do I sit down and wait for the poison to kill me? Or should I devise methods of resuscitating my health? Thank you.
We'll hear closing statements now. Proposers, you have 1 minute.
Where were you when your mother was being raped? Why didn't you prevent the snake from biting you? Now, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our little letter. A letter that reduces death, flooding, fires, all that in the community. And where are we debating? Right in the environment. Now, research by Amrovitz 2001 shows that the environment can no longer take any more natural disasters. And this is standing directly in the way of harmful effects. The environment is frayed by this. If we don't curb this in time, the unnatural factors, talking of technological effects, I've just talked of lead, will come engulfing us. Now, the inherent links between environmental conservation and risk management are clear. But take note, the prevention measures have little by little been worked into, and the depths are unknown. We don't know the effects they have. The choice is yours. Our environment is our pride. St. Mary.
Opposition, you have 1 minute for your final submission.
We have a very powerful public address system. And when the connection between this microphone and that speaker is cut, should I stop communicating to you and declare a disaster? And so we do not proceed with the debates because the communication line is cut? No. Instead, I look for alternative methods like projecting my voice and I'll communicate to you. Therefore, we have the ability to curb this menace, environmental degradation. Let us not sit down and declare it a disaster, but let us use the alternatives that I, together with my team, have provided that will help curb environmental degradation. It is not a disaster. Remove the solutions from your pockets and let us utilize them perfectly. And then we shall have a peaceful and a clean environment for the future posterity. Thank
you. To St. Mary's, I had these two issues that I wanted to raise to you. Number one, give us the facts of what is happening. Take us to an emotional drive across Kenya. What has been happening, the rivers that have dried up, that we have seen gone dry, some of the places that were all green and now are looking dry. We have issues and even campaigns coming up, like the Savo campaign coming up because of the environmental state there. What is happening there? If you would have taken us through that in a persuasive way, an emotional way, remember this is debate, you would have really won our hearts out of that. Philip, you have a good voice, and that was a very good start for you as a team. And the package of your submissions for easy delivery was excellently done. Wesley, good cross-examination as well, and facts that were tabled down and the examples as well went well, together with Shadrach.
Robert Ian Carlos, smart gentleman, very confident and quite articulate. But could I just ask a question about this abortion, rape, and environmental degradation. Possibly there's a merger here of sensitive issues. You know, the aspect of rape, the aspect of abortion, and you say that someone who abuses the environment is like a person who tries to procure an abortion, something close to that. And in some sense, I got the feeling that maybe you're saying, yes, abortion is okay as long as we terminate environmental degradation. There's a mix-up of issues. Maybe you want to separate them in order for you not to, in a way, some listeners might be sensitive to some issues, and a listener might block simply because you are treating a subject that is quite serious very lightly. Ian, good speaker. Deforestation, Robert, very good speaker again. You admitted there is a problem which is very important, and you're also looking at ways of maybe solving the problem. Good speakers from all of us, but I think we can improve in terms of articulation, we can improve in terms of doing research, we can improve rather in terms of maybe being biased, looking at your research and looking at what is important that I can submit to my audience and what is not important which I should leave out. And if you do that, then you can make great debaters. It was not fair presentation, but it was a good presentation with room for improvement.
Thank you, judges. We'll go straight to the numbers now. This was a very close call from the judges. There's a 1-point difference between the two teams. St. Mary's Yala, you have 66%. Please give them a round of applause. Sigalame High School, with 1 point between you and St. Mary's, you have 67, making you the winners of this debate. Thank you to the gentlemen of St. Mary's Yala and Sigalame High School for a wonderful debate. And thank you to our audience, both here in the studio and back at home. Keep watching us. The show only gets better. I have been your host, Mariam Bishar.